Peterson, and I'm your host today on Solo Pro Radio. Delighted to be here. I am the author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Solo and Creative Entrepreneurs. And you know who you are. You're the one-person businesses that are struggling to make it on your own and wade through all of the issues and the challenges that come from being a solo business. We talk about that a lot with our listeners. And what I have found as a longtime business advisor and business coach is that there are 7 basic things that you must do to achieve financial success as a solopreneur. And those are what I talk about in my book, Better, Smarter, Richer. It's a fill-in-the-blanks workbook. And as you go through it, it begins helping you look at your thinking and saying, wow, I can see where I'm holding myself back from the financial success that I would like to have. The 7 principles are available online as a free ebook. Also, if you go to my website, bettersmarterricher.com, you can not only get the free ebook, but you can also sign up for our newsletter. We'd love to have you involved, and you can read the blog. I've got stories of many, 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 many different solos, most of whom have been on this radio show, and you can gain inspiration from their stories and, their blogs on the Better, Smarter, Richer blog. If you would like to take the Better, Smarter, Richer study group, we do it in person here in Portland, Oregon, but it is also available to you online. One place is on Open Sesame at www.opensesame.com, and the other is through the Small Business Development Center in Oregon, which is www.bizcenter/BOL, Business Online. And this would be great. It really, really helps you to make the changes in your thinking that it takes to be financially successful as a solo. Also, if you're interested in the class but you're not sure you want to do that course, you can go to my website and you can download a free sample of what the course is like, and you can say, oh, man, that's wonderful, that's for me. So anyway, we have a great guest today. Her name is Kathleen Rich-New. She's a coach, consultant, speaker, author, and trainer. I love that. She is currently president of Clarity Works Consulting, a human resources firm. She helps companies reduce conflict so they can get more from the employees they have. Also, hire right employees the first time. That's a big deal. And can get leaders to work together well together. We know what happens when that doesn't go on. For the last 10 years, Kathleen has been an adjunct professor in the master's program at Webster University School of Business and Technology on the Space Coast of Florida. She holds a BS from Kansas State University, an MBA in marketing from the University of North Texas, the same school as Dr. Phil, and a master's of management in international human resources from the University of Dallas. She spent over 25 years in human resources working for companies that include Apple Computer, Nortel, and Silicon Graphics. What a lot of experience Kathleen is bringing to this discussion today. We're especially excited to talk to Kathleen about her book called Plan B, The Real Deal Guide to Creating Your Business. Hello, Kathleen.
Hello, Jackie. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I'm delighted to have you. You've got a wonderful resume and background, and I'm interested to learn more how you apply that, particularly in your book, Plan B. But talk to our audience first about your journey and your background. What led you into human resources consulting?
Well, my whole background in corporate America was in human resources. It became very interesting to me when I was getting my undergraduate degree, and then just pursued more and more classes. So I ended up with a degree in industrial relations, which is what it was called at the time, and then progressed through organizations. Apple Computer was one of those companies that I worked with in human resources. I was in Dallas, and I had responsibility for 7 states. So it was an automatic go-to when I just got burned out from my job in Silicon Valley and said, I just can't do this anymore, and stepped out of corporate America without much more thought about how I could really start a business. Figured I was smart and I would figure it out, just like I would figure out everything else. And boy, was it full of surprises for me.
I imagine. Do you want to talk about some of those?
Absolutely. So I'm an expert in what I do. However, that doesn't mean that I know how to express my value to potential clients, how to price my services, and then how to actually deliver and wrap up services and get referrals. So the biggest learning lesson for me is how do I even sell what I do, which means basically means I have to find pain. So if I work with an organization and I can't find any pain, there's no business for me there. I know because I've gone ahead and worked on proposals for companies that were just fine. They weren't really looking to go to the next level, but they were just looking to get better. And if the pain's not large enough, people won't spend money.
Yes. I've loved the phrase that says, we change when the pain is greater than the fear. Exactly. I like that one.
Exactly.
I like that one. Yeah. So I can see that was a lot of learning that you had, and what talk about. So let me talk a little bit more about your corporate experience and the richness of that, and that of course you bring with you. One of the wonderful things for us all is what we learn and what we've done so far in our lives. When we leave, we take it with us. It's between our ears, our intellectual property. So there's huge things that you learned working in human resources for large firms. And so what from that experience led you to start Clarity Works?
Well, part of it is the problems were all the same. So in large corporations, it didn't make any difference if you were talking to the frontline production worker or the VP with hundreds of people. Is when there were issues, they were all the same. So obviously when we talk about leadership, then there's bigger issues because of the ability to delegate and to build the rapport with their employees. But the problems continue to be the same. In fact, that's the reason I'm still in business here about 12 years later, because even though we know what should be done, that doesn't mean that we as leaders can do what is done. For example, right now I'm working on conducting exit interviews for employees who have left one organization the last 3 years. They have twice as high turnover as peers. Well, it all comes down to leadership. So my often quoted statement is, leaders aren't everything, but they're pretty close. And so and just working with organizations who suddenly, or individuals who I suddenly got promoted to an executive, and I have to figure out how to really show up as an executive within the next 2 weeks.
Wow. Do you coach people on that?
Absolutely. In fact, that specific comment came from a client that was at Ford Motor Company, and she literally had been selected as an executive and would be meeting with all of the board members and all the top executives within 2 weeks, and she needed to figure out how to show up like she knew how to do the job, had the expertise.
Right.
It was really about helping her work on her executive presence.
Oh, that is wonderful. Let me ask you a question that, I've observed this a lot, and I don't know if this is true overall or just, what I'm seeing from, my own little point of view, but I think that my observation is that women have a harder time with that than men. Is that true in your observation?
It is very interesting, and in fact, I have an additional business that caters to women called the Executive Woman's Coach. And what I find is there's some very specific trends. The first trend is that many women will not challenge assumptions that they don't think are right. Rather, they take the passive role and just sit there and shake their head yes. And if you aren't challenging assumptions, then the question is, why did they hire to begin with? The second issue for women is many feel that to go for a promotion or a new job, they feel they need to know how to do it first before they put their hand up. Men figure, well, if you're going to promote me, you already know I don't know how to do it, and so you're going to help me figure this out. You have enough confidence in me based on my past performance that you'll be able to do it.
Interesting. So I would think that this must be part of what is being talked about in the book, Sherry, from the Facebook executive, where she's talking about lean in.
Lean in, absolutely.
Yeah, about that. Interesting. I'm also a graduate of the women's movement back in the 60s. That's when I was actually starting my businesses a long time ago. And so there was a huge discussion about how women were going to move more into executive positions. And one of the discussions was about how men got socialized more to move into executive positions, and one of the ways that they got socialized was in team sports. And that, at that point, this is kind of maybe early Title 19. Women weren't in as many team sports as men were. They kind of naturally were, but women weren't at all. And so a lot of us kind of came together and said, okay, what are men learning in team sports? And right along with the line of what you're saying is that we decided that what men learned is how to fail in public and be okay with it. And, when you think of, some of the team sports that they're in, and maybe that's the same thing that you don't go for promotion if you don't know how to do the job. Maybe women haven't learned how to fail in public. And, that there's a piece of socialization that we didn't at least used to get that same way. And, it's something that we need because certainly if you don't know the job before you're promoted to it, you're going to make some big failures, but it's okay if you're learning.
Resilience. Yeah, resilience becomes a critical skill to learn, that you will fail, 100% guaranteed. The question is what happens when that happens. And obviously public humiliation. I mean, look at some of our politicians that have been publicly humiliated, and they're trotting around running for president. So obviously they viewed their failure differently. Yes,
they didn't feel it as you should get off the field and go hide in a dark cave somewhere. That is interesting. We'll have to have further discussion about that one of these days, Kathleen. That's very interesting. So when did you start your own business? What year did you do that?
That was in 2001.
Wow. So are you a solopreneur, or do you have other employees now?
Solopreneur. When I was in corporate America, I had staff and just did not want to deal with that. So I also have virtual assistants that I work with on different projects that are across the U.S. So that way it doesn't make any difference where they are. All it is I'm looking for their skill and using it. And certainly one of the tools that I've used is elance.com. So E is in electronic, lance.com. And so any skill I need, I can find on there, and I have found it to be very successful because the work I'm in as a solopreneur, it's like a roller coaster. Is like I'm in the middle of a large contract now, and I can't do anything else. And so once that wraps up, then I go back into the sales and marketing mode to create more business, and then go back into the project mode.
Oh, very good, very good. Those are good tips. We've talked to many solopreneurs, and they all say just exactly what you've said, is that, as they've come out of corporate America or come out of their learning background, they just do not want to spend their time managing employees. So they do contract with them, they subcontract with them, and have virtual assistants, and not only that, collaborate with other groups, and not only have a virtual assistant, but probably also have a bookkeeper, a webmaster, possibly an agent, may even have a person that does some marketing for them, all kinds of things that they have subcontracted out, and they're the beloved customer of those people rather than, as I say, their dreaded boss.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It absolutely. And that really is the direction that I'm seeing organizations go. And it's interesting because having been an adjunct professor for the last 10 years, if you're getting a master's degree, you come out of a large organization because solopreneurs and entrepreneurs are not going after master's degrees unless it's because they're specifically want it for the criteria to be able to start their business. And what I've heard again and again from the stories, because by the time we're 3 weeks into class, is they're spilling everything about what's going on, is that a lot of companies are just outsourcing work.
Yes.
And so that reduces their benefits costs, that reduces the overall payroll cost. And so anyone who doesn't have an entrepreneur focus and at least knowledge is really going to be at a disadvantage. I'm sitting here in Florida, right next to Cocoa Beach, and the end of the space shuttle program resulted in about 9,000 people being laid off in this area, and it's not a really big area. What the government did was give a grant to the Workforce Development Organization, and they created an entrepreneur program. Well, if you spend 20, 30 years in a government job, then trying to think like an entrepreneur is difficult. They've had a couple graduates that are successful, that what they have found for most of them is as they're finding jobs and jobs are coming back into the area, because they now can think differently. So I can now understand what's on the owner's mind is that they're getting more job offers and they're being more successful because they're not thinking like an employee anymore. So just being able to understand what the challenges are of the boss that you want to work for becomes an increasingly valuable tool in any interviews that you're going into.
That's great to get your perspective, especially, I'm in Oregon, so to get that perspective from clear across the country is something that we are seeing as well. And not only are we seeing that it's difficult for people who have, been working for corporate America or somebody like NASA, for 20 or 30 years and having a struggle, but I find that they can't even imagine that they know anything that somebody would be interested in buying, which is what business is all about, that I hold these resources, I hold this mindset, I hold this skill set, and I'm going to put it out on the marketplace. And, I get talking to some of these people, and they are, as somebody said, it's like the fish can't imagine the water in which it swims. And so many of them just can't even imagine that they have knowledge that they're carrying with them that somebody would be interested in purchasing from them other than going back into a job, as an employee, maybe back to their old company. It's just amazing. And so in that, enlightening that entrepreneurial thinking, there's a big hill to climb there as we make this shift in our economy. I mean, we really do need to think differently rather than think, who's going to bring me work? We have to be thinking, what do I know that is going to benefit the organization? And, how can I best put that together and put it in front of them because they need the skills that I have to offer? Different mindset.
Well, exactly. And in fact, it's interesting because I worked with one director who came out of the space program, is that she saw the handwriting on the wall and so came to me for coaching to transition into a different job before they closed down the entire organization. And we worked together to go ahead and help her understand the value that she brings. I mean, I looked at her resume and had an initial interview with her, and I was blown away by the knowledge, skills, and abilities that she brought. But it took a good 2 months until she was able to be comfortable enough to be able to talk about her successes and some of the challenges. In fact, at one point, preparing her for an interview with a very large company in Orlando, I have 2 Yorkies, and I put one of the Yorkies in my lap. And she sat across from me, and I said, now I'm going to ask you the questions, and you're going to give the answer to the dog. She was shaking so hard, but this is a woman who had run programs with millions and millions of dollars, and they always put her into really complex, sticky situations because she could figure out what the issues were and put together a plan and then actually bring projects back on time and back on target. But it took her a long time to be able to do what I saw.
Yes.
But she was successful in making the transition, and even teaching her about networking. She had an engineering background, and so engineers, by traits, are not social animals. They would just as soon kind of go home and read a good book. But just teaching her how to be comfortable in that environment and what to say in a way that it would be significant. And it actually was a networking event that she made the contact that led to her new position.
That's amazing. And yet it fits right in with what I've been talking to people about and observing as well, because I think what you're saying is when she was in a role in the company, and in that position, she was doing all of those complex jobs and taking charge of things and making things happen and bringing things to conclusion. It wasn't like it was her. it was her in that role, okay? And when it's her going after that, then what I know people are talking about is how vulnerable they feel. That now it's them individually as the person kind of almost standing there naked, in front of people, bringing forward these skills, knowledge, and abilities. But when you're in a role, you can kind of step behind a screen, and you're doing it from that role that you're in rather than you personally. And I think that's a vulnerability a lot of people have never faced or been willing to face. And, when you're in a corporate job, you don't have to do that. I I succeeded as the director of operations. But Jane Smith, oh, wow, that's different than the director of operations. And I think this is coming forward a lot. Particularly, I'm finding it with the Encore entrepreneurs I'm working with. I've got two of them right now who are in my coaching groups, and they are both 60 years old, and they are both right now, for the first time in their lives, going after work that has been their passion back from when they, went to college and graduated from school. They're finally taking that personal risk to go forward and do something that, they're scared to do because they're putting themselves on the line about something they're passionate about rather than something that was good and they kind of liked it, but it didn't call them individually forth, in a personal challenge and in a personal vulnerability like what they're doing now. So it's taken them until age 60 to decide to do that.
I tell you what, Jackie, that is perfect. And in fact, there's an awful lot of information that's starting to emerge because we're seeing boomers being outsourced, downsized, fired,
Yes.
or they just get tired of what they're doing and quit, is because they've already made so many mistakes, is they've pretty much figured out what works and doesn't work for them. So when they move forward, they're moving forward with a lot of knowledge that they wouldn't have had if they were in their, say, 20s and 30s. Because they've already made the mistakes, and they understand not to go down that rabbit hole again. Been there, done that. Thank you very much.
Yes, and that rabbit hole isn't going to go anywhere.
And there's a lot of, and I talk about a lot of the rabbit holes I went down, as well as the individuals that were both successful and who failed, so that people can understand from their mistakes and their successes, and then potentially be able to duplicate their successes, but not repeat their mistakes. They'll make mistakes, but perhaps not those mistakes.
Well, it's interesting in this reforming of the economy that we're doing, with this more and more solo businesses, more and more businesses, outsourcing to individuals, the gig economy, as one of my colleagues has called it. I think there's huge opportunity for us to have some big personal growth. Oh, darn, huh? Maybe even as a society to have this, because we're going to have to, stand there and be who we are, warts and all, rather than hide behind, the facade of a company or a position or a role. And I think it's going to be good for us. It might be painful getting there, which most things are that are good for us, but I think it's going to be good for us. I think we're going to wind up in some interesting spots because of it. I think we're going to grow up.
Along the woo-woo side of it is we've got 3 eclipses happening within 60 days of each other.
Yes.
In fact, Friday is the second of the 3 eclipse. So that alone creates its own energy. The solar flares coming off of the sun,
yeah.
So far haven't done much damage other than knock out a few credit card machines.
Mm-hmm.
But we have all this energy moving around us all the time, and because we don't see it, then we tend to discount it. It's like I was here when they had 4 hurricanes through the same area within a few months of each other. And I mean, it took people a long time, even if there wasn't any damage, to get sorted out because of all of the energies being pulled on us. And
Yes.
and so it's as one person said, it's as if we've been living in a warehouse with a 30-watt bulb, and somebody opened the door, pulled back the curtain, and put on floodlights.
Yes. And we're just really blinking and trying to figure out what is that horrible stuff out there, all that light. You know, I can see that that's true, you know, what you're talking about, the solar flares and the energy. Everybody I have talked to for the last couple days has told me that absolutely everything in their life is up in the air. You know, their relationships, their business, their revenue streams, their, you know, their kids, their, you know, everything is changing right now, and it's all up in the air. And I think I've had that conversation with at least 3 people, you know, in just the last 48 hours, and, you know, women in business. And I told them that one of my prior clients said that the advice she got is, okay, well, when everything's up in the air, what you can do is kind of celebrate because it means it has an opportunity to all come down in the right spot. They said, oh, I like that. But I think that energy
intent.
It's the intent, yeah, it's really hitting us. So, do you like the experience of being an entrepreneur and being on your own? Are you happy with that?
I can't imagine going back into a job.
Yeah.
It would have to be just remarkable leadership, position, and freedom. So absolutely, because I can choose who I work with. For example, to coach with me is we have first a half an hour to an hour discussion, evaluation about what you're trying to achieve, what's important to you, you know, what's led you to this point. And if it becomes very clear that this individual, 1, won't listen, 2, is not coachable, or 3, I just don't think I have a match for them, then I send them on their way to someone else.
Oh,
Now,
yes.
and in a corporate role in human resources is if an employee came to you, you had to work with them, period. And in addition to that, I can also go after specific clients that really would be fun to work with. And then also I could help them create additional success. So that makes a difference. The downside of it is I don't have a tribe.
Yes. Yes.
And so I do miss that camaraderie and that coming together and bouncing things off of people that are consistently in your life, and you're all focused on the same thing. So that's probably the only drawback that I see. Other than that, you do have to make sales to be able to create revenue coming in the door. So you have to learn how to sell. So how to be able to talk with potential clients, to find their pain, and then be able to articulate what you do in a way that they can understand how you could fix it, so that they'll want to work with you.
You know, both of the things you've talked about, particularly the one about don't have a tribe, a lot of people talk about the loneliness, you know, of being a solo, and maybe you're working in, you know, out of your home or out of a small office. And I keep saying this is why coffee shops have become so popular. But, you know, one of the things we're trying to do here on Solo Pro Radio and, by the way, on the Better, Smarter, Richer website is build that tribe, you know, have some conversations going for solos and, you know, have them plug in to the challenges of working on your own and, you know, being able to have some discussions and groups, because so many people are feeling exactly that. And as far as making sales, I keep saying that definitely is one of the downsides. And in Better, Smarter, Richer, what I talk about is that you have to market every single day, because the essence of it is to be excited and enthusiastic about what it is that you do. And if you keep at it every single day, whether it's, you know, a networking event or calling and talking to some people or having lunch with a referral source or, working on your website copy or writing a paper or, you know, whatever that you do, making a sales pitch, you know, if you keep doing it, then it isn't so onerous. If you let it build up, you know, so it's like this blank wall you're facing, you know, and you can't figure out how you're going to scale it and get over it, then it's really daunting. But, you know, if you do something every day, you keep the fear at bay. you keep yourself in kind of a marketing mindset, and that helps keep your pipeline full, and it helps to get through it. So, like you mentioned earlier, you're in project mode, and you're going to have to go into marketing mode. And what I tell people is, even if you're busy in projects, make some time every single day to do something, so that the pipeline doesn't empty out, and you finish a project, and then you're looking at taking 6 weeks to build it back up again. And that seems to help people. I know it's helped me over the years to just know that I've got to do something every day towards marketing my business, and then it keeps it from being awful.
Exactly. In fact, I'm going to a by invitation only networking event tonight, where there'll be people there from medium-sized to large-sized companies. So specifically, first of all, by invitation only has its own nice feel to it, and then the second is that potential decision makers are going to be in that room, and I want the opportunity to connect with them, to just be able to set up a meeting later on this week or next week to talk further about their business and finding if there's pain there that I can help them with.
Yes. Oh, good for you. I think that's perfect. So, Kathleen, in your contact information, you said that when you were starting your own business, it was quite an adventure, and you say that journey led you down many rabbit holes. Do you want to talk about that and what the unexpected challenges you faced?
And absolutely. So I said earlier, it's first of all, how do I get customers? And then once I identify customers, how do I talk to them? How do I price my services? I was in a startup with a partner kind of early on, and it was a great idea, but we did not we did not have a contract reviewed by an attorney, and should have. And so we had already invested almost $100,000 into the development of a very complex website that would have some very unique tracking abilities for it. And when we wanted to send an auditor in to confirm that they had built what they said they had, is we got a call from their attorney and said, well, first of all, you don't have that right. Second of all, you need to pay us the balance of it. And we own all of the intellectual property and the design if you decide at any point in time to go to a different web designer. So we literally lost $100,000.
Oh, my goodness.
We didn't have the additional capital, so the whole thing folded. So that was, I was working on it part-time, and my partner was working on it full-time, but that was a 2-year project. So the time and the money was just lost.
Wow. That's quite a story. That's an expensive learning.
Absolutely. And one of the the people I interviewed for this actually was looking for passive income, looking a way to do investments, and so he was approached by someone from church, and it was an idea about using very lightweight plastic. So think about plywood. We're here in hurricanes from time to time, and most people will put up plywood. There's more people injured putting up plywood than actually injured during hurricanes. This was a very lightweight, and it was opaque, so light would come in. Light does not come in if you put plywood over your windows. Mm-hmm. In some cases, we just stayed shuttered up for 2 weeks straight because the hurricanes kept coming. Again, we haven't had a hurricane in probably 8 years now.
Wow!
But it's memories like that, and it was a very hot product, and it made perfect sense. He went ahead and invested because the primary partner was a well-known contractor in the area, so he had the connections, he had the licenses, and as they were unloading the very first truck load of this plastic plywood, is what they called it, is his partner died.
Oh, goodness.
And so now he said...
And no paperwork?
No paperwork. I mean, they all had a formal agreement. But suddenly, this person that was going to be a silent partner was up the ladder, installing plastic plywood on 2-story homes.
Oh my goodness!
And then what happened is about a year and a half later, then the local regulations said in order to have that, you have to have a general contractor license, which his partner did have. His partner had died, and so he literally had to just close the doors and sell off what he had in inventory. And in fact,
oh my goodness,
had 36 sheets left. So in thinking it through, one of the tools that I created is called there's a couple tools. One is the 6 key ingredients, which is, here's what the most successful companies have. So, for example, market trends. Is your market trend growing? Well, applying it to this plastic plywood, it was growing because it was brand new, and because it really made a difference. So you're thinking about boomers putting up plywood, and the plywood becomes very heavy. When it gets wet, it's even heavier. So market trends were growing, absolutely. Consumable products, well, no, it wasn't. But because condo associations were interested in it, homeowners were interested in it, was brand new, there was a big enough market for that to consider. Also around the consumable piece of it, hurricane season begins in June and ends in November. So we only have a hurricane season here for 6 months, and you only look at something like that if a hurricane's coming. And if a hurricane's not coming, it just sits there. So, applying the 6 key ingredients, which I do in the book, to that example shows that, in fact, this was not a good investment. But he didn't have a way to think about whether this made sense or not. And then part of what I've created is called the Real Deal Checklist. 6 key ingredients is any idea you're having is from a trend perspective, is this going to make sense for me just as far as industry? And then you personally, the Real Deal Checklist is, so what is it that you're going to create or resell? So in this case, he was reselling the plastic plywood. Who was going to buy it? Buyers were abundant. So again, condos wanted it, homes wanted it, and it was a wide open market for those individuals who have not had the very, very expensive shutters that can actually be mounted on your home and then just be electronically done. So those are thousands of dollars, and this potentially was like $100 a window versus a couple thousand. And then basically, why would they want it? Well, they only wanted it when hurricanes were coming. Other than that, they didn't care.
Yeah, right.
And then how are you going to fulfill it? Well, he fulfilled it by actually doing the work himself when his partner died. So there's like 6 areas in the Real Deal Checklist, but it's what I call a soft business plan. It helps you really think through if this makes sense or not before you ever start spending a lot of time and money.
So this is, you talk about in your book. You're talking about your book Plan B, right?
Plan B, yes.
Yeah. And I like that. So talk a little bit about Plan B. Is it, full of this kind of advice, or as you said, it's a soft business plan? Talk about that.
Right. So the way it's been described is Plan B has been described, Plan B, the real deal guide to creating your business. It's been described multiple ways. One is the first half of the book is really about personal development. Am I really ready to do the work that lies ahead, and how do I make sure that the work lifestyle around this business that I'm thinking about, it really matches me, and it's going to be able to be something that's sustainable for 5, 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. The second half is about business readiness and what is it going to take to create to create one of the 4 types of business. You either start a business, you buy a business, you buy a franchise, or you do network marketing. Mm-hmm. So all 4 of those can be successful, but depending on who you are and what works for you, some of them will be more successful than others. For example, if you really like structure and a certain way of doing things, then a franchise would probably be a good match. But if you're a tweaker and you're always trying to figure out a new way to do something, a franchise would be a bad match because the franchise...
They would not like it much.
Would not like, because you're doing the same thing day in, day out, year in, year out.
Yes, and your franchise holder doesn't want you to tweak it.
And in fact, you could lose the franchise if you're not following their systems. Mm-hmm. And then someone else who's a boomer who's gotten recently married said, well, it's like premarital counseling where you dive in for the next 20 years.
Wow.
Let's just understand what's ahead. Now, she in fact did go on to start her own business. But she read it and then called me and said, okay, this is like premarital counseling. And she knew what was ahead, and she went ahead and started her own business. And it's only a few months old. She already has customers. So she's already making a profit from the small investment that she had to make.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's good. So you've got some good success stories going already.
Oh, absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. In fact, Chapter 7, which is a chapter on how to start a business, is really the work that I did with my coaching client that was transitioning because of the end of the shuttle program. And the company she went with, I had a contract for 3 more years, and she knew when the contract ended they would not be able to renew. And because of her unique skills, she would probably have to relocate from this area to be able to get another job. And based on her age, she wasn't sure if that was going to be even viable. So we went on and worked together, and Chapter 7 literally takes her expertise. So her expertise really came out in project management. She could get bad behaving teams back on time and back on budget.
Wow.
In fact, saving, in the large company she was with, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. So unique, a very unique skill set. And you know, a small athletic woman, you know, probably not even 5 foot, maybe 100 pounds, and very soft-spoken, you know, could go in and take care of these huge problems just very quietly, very much behind the scenes. But it took a while to really understand how unique that was. So think about how many times we have read in the paper about government contracts being over budget and behind schedule by millions of dollars over budget and years behind schedules. So her ability was very unique around that. We created a whole business plan that when she implements it, it'll take her 3 to 5 years, but she'll be able to turn around and sell it for millions of dollars.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is truly wonderful. And, you know, when somebody can do a job like that, we all benefit, you know, because she'll get her clients, again, coming in on time, on budget, and bring her skills to the world. And every one of us will benefit. You know, we'll benefit in lower fees, lower costs, more customer satisfaction. You know, when somebody does a good job and really implements, carries out their particular skill set and passion, everybody benefits from that. That's why it's so important that they do it, and so important that people find, you know, their niche, find their skill set, because we're all waiting for them to bring their talent to us.
Right.
That's fabulous.
And so just like the personal transition that you were talking about earlier that I laughed at, Jackie,
yes.
is that she would rather just work for someone, but she clearly sees that's not an option. So the very fact that she started 3 years before the end of the next position she moved into, then gives her time to really ramp up on a part-time basis. And so by the time, and her current organization is very supportive of her doing this, so there's no conflict of interest.
That's fabulous.
It takes persistence and follow-through to be able to create what you want.
And courage. A lot of courage, you know. I mean, that's it also takes that as well. And, you know, be able to and be willing to put yourself out there and see how important what you're doing is, and be scared to death and do it anyway, you know.
Right. Well, in fact, the way I approach that is in fact, Chapter 2 is called, Is Your Why Bigger Than Your Butt?
Oh.
That's butt with one T.
Yes, yes.
It's the yeah, but I don't have enough time.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm too busy. Yeah, but I don't know exactly what to do.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So you
why
and your why is their passion and their purpose. Are they excited about something and it's greater than the fear of doing it? So the excitement's going to move them forward.
Exactly.
That's what
and when they do stumble.
Oh, yeah.
And they will, then it's just seen as a slight irritation because they're still focused on exactly where they want to go.
Oh, that's so wonderful. So if you had to name 3 things that important things that a new entrepreneur should know, could you bring it down to 3 things that they ought to know before they start a new venture?
Absolutely. First of all, they need to know if their idea has a growing customer base, a stable customer base, or a deteriorating customer base. Now, for example, 3 trends are puppies, pounds, and wrinkles. So people do anything for their pets. I talked to one person that spent $400 to do an allergy test on their dog because it seems to be allergic to everything. And actually, people are buying pets for their pets.
You're in Portland, Oregon. We are a doggy city, so we get this here. And actually, during the economic downturn, when it was so awful in 2008 and 2009, the businesses that didn't even miss a beat were about pets. People still spent money on their pets.
Right, and pounds. So the country is obese. The world is becoming obese in the developed countries. So diets, trainers, anything that can help get the weight off. And then the wrinkles are, because we are the encore generation with another bonus round of 30 years, is people still have to, we are still a visually motivated organization. And so as a boomer, they may be competing against fresh-out college grads or those in maybe their 20s or 30s who look young, fresh, and vivacious. They have to also look as young, fresh, and vivacious as they can. So the whole anti-aging piece of it, so not only anti-aging as far as my skin, but also what is the vibrancy that I have in my body? What is the energy that I bring? Do I have the stamina to be able to keep up with what my employer is asking me to do? So they have to really understand the target market. The second thing is they have to know how to make sales.
Yes.
That means they need to be able to develop rapport. They need to be able to make a power statement about this is what we do. For example, one of my power statements is I help reduce conflict so you can get more from the employees you have. Or I help you hire the right person the first time. Depending on who I'm talking to, that may change a little bit, so they turn around and say, well, what I'm really looking for is my sales group is not doing very well. And I say, I have a colleague that helps you convert leads into sales at a higher percentage than any organization in the U.S. So now, boom, they're interested. I'm able to do a referral. And the third thing they have to do is they have to have enough money to fund their personal lifestyle and the business lifestyle for easily up to 3 years, because that may be how long it's going to take to be profitable.
Yes. That's a heavy one, and it's often a big reason for failure. We know that at the Small Business Development Center, and a lot of people are spending their energy because they don't have money, and sometimes that works. Actually, I call it the whirling dervish method of capital formation when I see somebody doing this, where they're just, working, and I keep saying you're spinning like a whirling dervish, and the idea is that you're going to create butter. And,
yes.
You see people doing that, and sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't, particularly if it's a product-based business and you have to invest in equipment and inventory. Then you're going to have a hard time doing that. If if it's totally personal services business, you have a pretty good chance of being able to make that happen. But not a product-based business, where you've got to manufacture, you've got to create it, or as they say, you've got to invest in equipment or in plant and equipment of some kind, and you've got to invest in having an inventory and a manufacturing process. That has to have the funding. So it's really
and what's interesting. Some of the folks that, when I do speeches and presentation workshops, is they're absolutely flabbergasted that the banks won't loan them money for a startup. Mm-hmm. And part of it is 80% of new businesses fail in the first 3 years. Banks are in business to make money. Why would they fund you as a startup if, in fact, you've never done one before that was successful? Instead, look at potentially, taking out a home equity loan. Look at any savings that you have. Look at assets that you can sell, perhaps like a house or a car or a collection. But look at what money you can create on your own. Or, of course, there's always the popular 3 Fs, friends, families, and fools that you potentially can get money from.
We are seeing many more people beginning to use crowdsourcing, and that's rising in popularity. And we're seeing that people are being able to get some projects funded that way that they wouldn't have been able to do before. That didn't exist, and I think that's a helpful sign. And we also direct people an awful lot to some of the alternative funding. We've got a few community development organizations around that will even do a grant where if you save $1,000, they will give you a matching grant for another $3,000, and then you've got $4,000 to start your business. And, that's been very helpful to go on. And then, if you can kind of crawl up out of the primordial soup, as I call it, and make it to land, and your business begins doing something, then, you have an opportunity to really maybe go get a bank line of credit. And a lot of times they're pretty okay with giving a small line of credit of, say, $10,000 or $15,000. And then if you can judiciously use that, you can take it to the next step. But you really have to be thoughtful and careful about what you're doing. And, if you don't have the capital investment to make it happen, it's quite a challenge. So when you work with clients on developing their Plan B, are you a coach and a trainer? Do you work one-on-one? Do you do workshops, or how exactly do you do that?
Okay, so I do events. I do Plan B boot camps, and it's really 2 days of drilling down on exactly what your ideas are. Even if you don't have an idea, but you know you want to create a Plan B, it's time. Then it's the whole process of really exploring exactly what's possible. I also do telephone coaching. I have people fly in, and we will sit down, and we will do a half day to a 2-day intensive where I'm just working with them individually or their small group, and really just help them think through every piece and part of it. But, we have to begin with sales. Again, what is the pain that you're fixing, or what pleasure are you going to bring? People only buy for those two reasons. They don't buy for anything else. So if you can't articulate, if the pain's not big enough, then you're not going to have any sales. And then the second piece is being very clear about exactly who their ideal customers are. For example, if I'm in the wrinkles business, anyone who's over 40 with skin is my client. No, it's not. It's you're looking for middle to upper income. You're looking for individuals who are in an industry that requires them to look younger and fresher, and that you're looking for also to help people understand that that they can change, they can continue to look younger and younger up to a certain point, and then it's a maintenance mode. So if I don't care what I look like, or if I haven't got the money to spend $100 a month, then I'm not your client.
Yes, that's true.
And now how do you get in front of those people? Because we're talking country club, we're talking people who play golf, sports, so we're talking affluent people. So how do you find them, and how do you connect with them to be able to create rapport so that you can talk about helping them so that they'll buy from you?
This is great. This is really great. So it seems to me that you help people and you help companies and finding perfect fit, and you help people get their businesses started. And are you finding, because I met you at the Aging in America conference, are you finding, as I'm finding, that an awful lot of people 50 plus are, wanting and needing to start businesses and need the information from Plan B? Is this getting to be a bigger part of your biggest business these days?
And absolutely, because the Plan B, the Real Deal Guide to Creating Your Business, was written with boomers in mind. So they're seasoned professionals. They have some money, and they also have learned how to be successful, typically in a job. But the intent, and what I do know, is because our economy, again, the economy's back, except no one's hiring, or very few people are hiring. So 9,000 jobless have left here, and someone opens up a new company and they're going to add 50 jobs. It's not going to take care of those individuals. So many of them are realizing, I have to do something. And, oh, by the way, after sending out two resumes, I got 2 interviews. After sending 200 resumes out, this was a conversation yesterday, I sent 200 resumes out. I got 2 interviews and no callbacks. And it's like, it's obvious. You just look at my resume and you can tell how old I am. It's obvious that I'm not being hired because of how old I am. And very honestly, anyone over 45 who gets laid off, good luck.
Yes, that's very true. We've got story after story of people in exactly that situation. They are out of the workforce for some reason and, can't get back in. And not only can't get back in, they can't even get an interview to get in. Skilled, talented people. And again and again, I'm seeing that those are the people that are starting their own businesses and moving. I'm seeing exactly the same thing you're seeing, Kathleen. So, Kathleen, I've just loved our discussion. We're just about out of time. And Do you have any last-minute wisdom to add to the conversation? Is there...
Absolutely. First of all,
okay.
They have to connect with their passion. So again, you need to create a why that's bigger than your butt. The yeah butts that get in your way. So being very clear about exactly why you're willing to do the work it's going to take, because there will be work ahead. The second is that you really have to find a niche that's growing, so that so that the pain continues to increase and there becomes a continuous revenue stream for you. And the third thing is you have to be resilient.
Yes.
You will fail, and just look at it as, well, that way didn't work, so let me think about something else. And so your ability to pick yourself up, to realize the whole world didn't collapse around you, and so what can you do instead?
Yeah. This isn't the end of the world, It's pick it up and start over, and that would be an interesting discussion to have. Maybe we'll talk some more and talk about how people can help make themselves more resilient. So I'm just absolutely sure that some of our listeners are kind of jumping up and down and are eager to get in touch with you. So can you tell them how to contact you?
Absolutely. So first of all, they can go to the website for my Plan B book, and I have multiple websites, but it's planbcoach.com. So Plan B is in ABC, planbcoach.com, and they can order the book there. They can also contact me there, or they can give me a call at area code 321, because we are in the Space Coast, 321-452-7308, and just give me a call. And I'd be happy to talk with them about what they're trying to do for their business or what they're trying to do for themselves.
Oh, that's great. So, Kathleen, I've just thoroughly enjoyed talking with you, and I hope you'll also take a look at Better, Smarter, Richer. I think you'll say, oh, my goodness, this woman's talking about exactly the same thing I'm talking about. And, we have many words in common, and it's very important to bring forward to people that are starting their own businesses, especially when, they've come out of corporate America, or they're in a situation where, they've just never thought before about starting their own business. You have lots of wisdom and lots of good advice, and I just so appreciate that you're taking time to share with our listeners today. So, listeners, this is Jackie B. Peterson bringing this program to a close this morning. And you may recall I'm the author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Solo and Creative Entrepreneurs. And I hope you'll go to my website, bettersmarterricher.com, download the free ebook, and also sign up for our newsletter and take a look at the blog. And if you become more interested in taking our online coaching course, you can find it at www.opensesame.com. I'd love to hear from you. And as our speaker, Kathleen, today, as my guest today, talked about being part of the tribe, we're building a tribe for Better, Smarter, Richer, and we would love to have you join us and overcome some of that feeling alone and by yourself. Our guest next week is going to be Luna Jaffe. Luna is a fabulous financial planner who has just written a book about wild women money, and she's got some great processes to help women get in control of and get ahead of and work with and develop skills that will help them build their long-term wealth. I know you'll also enjoy that conversation. So until next week, I hope you'll tune in again, and I'll look forward to having you join us. And thank you again, Kathleen, and goodbye.
Thank you, Jackie.